My wife secretly stole $250, $0 from our joint account and lied about losing it in a scam, then convinced me to sign papers giving her full ownership of our house during our divorce. And now she's claiming I abused her to get custody of our kids. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing out my story like this. But honestly, I don't know what else to do. The thing is, my wife was always the picture-perfect wife, beautiful, charming, always acting like she had everything under control. We'd been together for about 10 years, and for most of it, I thought we had a solid life. We had a nice house, decent jobs, 2 kids I loved more than anything. But in the last 6 months, everything started to change, and I didn't see it coming. It all started with little things. Began working late more often, claiming she had to meet clients or stay late at the office. I didn't think much of it at first. She'd always been ambitious, and I figured she just wanted to climb the ladder. But then she started hiding her phone. She'd take calls in the bathroom or lock her screen when she was on her device. Small signs, but they added up. I'd catch her texting at odd hours, and she'd get defensive if I asked her who she was talking to. Then one day, I noticed a strange charge on our joint bank account. It was a huge withdrawal, 250. I know what you're thinking, that's a crazy amount of money. I was stunned. I immediately looked at the account details, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Had transferred the money to some account she refused to tell me about, and her explanation was that she'd lost it in a scam, some get-rich-quick scheme she got involved with online. She claimed she'd been duped, that she didn't mean to steal from us but was just trying to fix her mistake. I wanted to believe her, but something about it felt off. That same day, I started digging into her phone and emails. I found messages, flirty, suggestive texts with some guy named Jake. At first, I thought maybe it was just a client or a friend, but the tone was way too intimate. They were talking about meeting up, about sex, about how much they both wanted to get away from their lives. My heart sank. I'd seen her flirt before, but this was more than that. It was real, it was happening. When I confronted her about the texts, face turned icy. She brushed it off, said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. She told me Jake was just that they'd been friends for years and that I was overreacting. But I knew better. I'd seen her lying, I'd seen her sneaking around. And now, with the money gone and her phone full of secret messages, I felt like I was living in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The worst part, she had the nerve to look me in the eye and tell me I was crazy, that I was imagining her cheating, that I was obsessing over nothing. She called me paranoid, accused me of mistrusting her because I was insecure. But I knew the truth, was cheating on me, and she was hiding something huge. I felt betrayed, angry, and confused all at once. How could she do this? How could she lie about losing that money, lie about Jake, and then turn around and gaslight me like I was the crazy one? I remember sitting in our living room that night, staring at her, trying to process everything. I felt like I had been hit by a truck. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, was sneaking around behind my back, stealing from us and lying through her teeth. And I had no idea how to fix it, or even if I wanted to. All I knew was that I had to find out what was really going on before it was too late. After that night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing over everything I'd found out. The money, secret texts, her cold denial. It was like my whole world had flipped upside down. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see it coming. But the truth was, I'd been blinded by love, by trust, by the idea that we had a future built on honesty. The next morning, I decided I needed to get some answers. I started digging into the bank records more thoroughly, pulling every statement I could find. That's when I learned that I'd been secretly transferring money into a private account for months. Not just the $250, $0. She'd been siphoning small amounts here and there, building up her stash. I couldn't believe she'd gone so far, so sneaky. I felt sick seeing the evidence laid out in front of me. She'd been lying to my face for months, and I'd never suspected a thing. I also found out about her affair with Jake. Turns out, they'd been exchanging messages and meeting up for sex for almost a year. I'd always thought she was just working late or going out with friends. But no, she'd been sneaking off to see him, probably behind my back every chance she got. The worst part, she told me she was too busy to have sex or even spend time with me. She'd been using me, using our life together as a cover for her secret world. That's when I decided I had to confront her again. I set up a time to talk. This time I was ready. I told her I knew everything. Her face drained of color when I laid out the evidence. Her excuses started pouring out. She said she was stressed, that she was overwhelmed, that she didn't mean to hurt me. She claimed she'd been caught up in some bad decisions and was sorry. But her tone was defensive, almost angry, like I was the one invading her privacy, not the other way around. I was furious but also heartbroken. How could she treat me like this? How could she betray everything we built over the years? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I asked her why she did it, why she lied and cheated. Her answer: that I was boring, that I didn't satisfy her anymore, that she needed excitement. She told me she didn't love me anymore, that she was only with me because of the kids and the house. I couldn't believe I was hearing this from the woman I'd trusted with my life. The betrayal hit me hard. I felt a wave of anger rise up, pure, unfiltered rage. I wanted to scream, to break something. I thought about all the nights I'd gone to bed feeling lonely, all the times I'd tried to fix things, only to be met with her cold indifference. I was devastated, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I couldn't keep pretending. Everything was okay. This wasn't just a fling or some mistake. This was a full-blown betrayal of everything we once stood for. I told her she needed to leave. I couldn't live under the same roof with someone who had lied so blatantly, who had stolen from us and betrayed our family. She put up a fight, of course. She accused me of being paranoid, of not trusting her, of trying to control her. She said she'd never cheat, that I was just insecure. But I knew better. I'd seen her texts, her bank transfers, her secret meetings. There was no denying it anymore. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming. I went from feeling numb to angry, then to sadness. I felt like I'd lost my best friend, my partner, the woman I'd sworn to love and protect. Now I was left with a broken house, a broken heart, and a future that looked uncertain. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew I had to do something. I had to protect my kids, protect what was left of my dignity, and figure out how to move forward from this nightmare. The days that followed were a blur. After telling she had to leave, she packed her bags with that same bitchy attitude she always had when she felt cornered. She threw her things into the car like she was doing me some favor, and as she slammed the door behind her, I felt a strange mix of relief and despair. But that relief was short-lived, because then I started digging even deeper, and that's when I found out just how deep her lies went. While she was gone, I hired a private investigator. I needed to know if she was really done or if she was still sneaking around. Turns out she was. The Pi tracked her to a cheap motel a few towns over where she was meeting Jake again. They'd been caught on camera, kissing and fooling around like teenagers. Seeing those pictures was like a punch to the stomach. I'd always known she was cheating, but seeing her with another man, knowing she'd been lying to me all this time, made it all so real, so raw. At that point, I realized I had to get serious about the financial mess she'd left behind. I pulled all the bank statements, the emails, everything I could find. Turns out she'd been planning her escape for months. The money she stole, the affair, none of it was just a coincidence. She'd been planning to leave, to start over with Jake, and she'd used me as her cover. I felt so stupid for trusting her, for thinking we had some kind of future. I'd been played. I also discovered she'd been lying about the house. During our divorce proceedings, she convinced me to sign papers giving her full ownership of the house, claiming she needed it for the sake of the kids and that I'd get visitation rights. She told me she'd be a good mom, that I'd still see my kids all the time. But behind my back, she'd been making plans to sell the house, to move away with Jake and leave me with nothing. I felt betrayed all over again. The woman I thought I knew was just a con artist, a manipulator, a liar. I remember sitting in my office that night, staring at the divorce papers I'd signed, realizing she'd tricked me into giving her everything. I'd been so desperate to keep the peace, to protect my kids, that I'd overlooked the obvious: she had no intention of sticking around. She just wanted the house, the money, and her new life with Jake. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. All those years, all those promises, and she'd been planning her escape the whole time. Meanwhile, she kept spinning her lies. She told the kids I was abusing her, that I was a terrible husband and father. She painted herself as the victim, the wronged wife who was just trying to find happiness. It made me sick. I knew she was just trying to turn everyone against me to make herself look innocent, but I also knew the truth. I knew what she was really capable of: lying, cheating, stealing, and I refused to let her manipulate me or the kids anymore. I started gathering evidence, texts, emails, witness statements. I wanted to make sure the truth came out. I filed for full custody of the kids, knowing I'd have to fight her false accusations of abuse. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I couldn't let her win. I had to stand my ground for my children's sake. I knew she'd do anything to keep her new life with Jake, but I was going to let her take my kids away from me without a fight. Looking back now, I realize how much trust I lost. I used to think love and honesty were the foundation of everything. But betrayal cuts deep. It changes you. I still feel angry, still hurt, but I also feel a strange sense of clarity. I learned that sometimes the person you love the most can turn out to be the biggest liar. And when that happens, you have to fight for what's right: yourself, your dignity, and your kids. Because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. The court hearings were a nightmare. With her bitchy attitude and fake tears, tried to paint herself as the innocent victim, claiming I was an abuser, that I'd been controlling and violent. She brought her new boyfriend Jake to testify, trying to make it seem like I was dangerous. I couldn't believe how far she'd go just to keep her lies afloat. It was like watching a bad soap opera, only this was real life and my kids were caught in the middle. I had all the evidence I needed: texts where she admitted to cheating, bank statements showing the money she stole, the pictures of her with Jake. I even hired a private investigator to confirm everything. I knew I could prove her lies, but that didn't make it any easier. Seeing her in court acting like she was the victim made my blood boil. I felt like she was trying to gaslight everyone, trying to turn the tables so that I looked like the bad guy. But I knew better. I knew the truth. Throughout the hearings, I kept my cool, but inside I was a mess. I was angry, hurt, and exhausted. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she'd betrayed everything we'd built. But I stayed silent, letting my evidence speak for itself. When it was my turn, I laid out everything: the stolen money, her affair, her manipulations. I explained how I'd been, how I'd loved her and trusted her, only to find out she'd been lying to my face for months. The judge listened carefully, and I could tell she saw through's act. I could see the moment's facade cracked when I presented the proof of her affair and the bank transfers. She tried to deny everything at first, but I had the emails, the bank records, the witness statements. It was over for her. The judge finally made her ruling: full custody of the kids to me with supervised visitation and she ordered to pay back the stolen money, plus damages for emotional distress. When the court adjourned, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with exhaustion. I'd fought hard to keep my kids close, to protect what little was left of our family. But I knew this wasn't the end. Was still out there, and she'd probably try to fight me, try to turn the kids against me. That's what she loved to do: manipulate, lie, and control. But I was determined to be the father they needed, the one who would never betray them or lie to them. That night, I finally sat down and looked at everything I'd been through. The betrayal, the lies, the stolen money. It all felt like a horrible nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But I also felt a strange sense of resolve. I realized I had to rebuild not just my life, but my trust in myself. I'd trusted blindly, and she'd shattered that trust, but I wasn't going to let her win. I was going to protect my kids, get my life back on track, and somehow find a way to heal from all this. As I write this, I still feel the sting of betrayal. But I also understand now that I can't control her actions. I can only control how I respond. And I choose to fight for my children, to be the father they deserve: strong, honest, and never again blinded by love that turned into lies. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar knows: trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to stand your ground. Because in the end, your integrity and your kids are what matter most. After the court's decision, Things didn't magically get better, but at least I knew I had some clarity. Moved out of the house, but she didn't go quietly. She spent weeks trying to spin stories, trying to manipulate everyone, family, friends, even the kids. She'd call the house, leave fake messages crying about how terrible I was, how I was abusing her and trying to keep her away from her own children. It was all lies, but that didn't stop her from trying to paint herself as the victim. I stayed strong, though. I knew her game. I had the evidence, and I was prepared for her next move. I kept a detailed journal of everything: the false accusations, her manipulative texts, her attempts to sway the kids. I also hired a counselor for the kids, so they'd have someone to talk to about what was going on. I didn't want them to grow up thinking their mother was always right or that I was the villain. I just wanted them to be safe and understand that their dad loved them unconditionally. Meanwhile, kept pushing her narrative. She went as far as to claim I had abused her during our marriage, an outright lie. She knew I'd never hurt her, but that didn't stop her from making accusations. I had to go through a series of court hearings, providing evidence that I was a loving, responsible father. It was exhausting. Every time she filed a new complaint, I had to prove her wrong. But I refused to let her manipulate the system. On a more personal level, I felt a growing sense of bitterness. I kept asking myself how someone I loved could turn into this person, lying, stealing, cheating, and then trying to destroy me. It was like I was living with a stranger. I started to question everything: our relationship, my judgment, my own worth. It was a dark time, but I knew I had to keep going for the kids. They needed stability, and I was determined to give it to them. One day, I finally sat down and had a long talk with my oldest son, Jake. I explained what was happening in a way that was honest but age-appropriate. I told him that sometimes adults make mistakes and do bad things, but that I loved him and his sister more than anything in the world. I told him that I'd always be there for them, no matter what said or did. That conversation was tough, but I think it helped him understand that even though things were complicated, his dad was still his safe place. Honestly, I've come to realize that forgiveness isn't really an option here, not yet. I don't forgive for what she did, and I probably never will. But I've learned to accept that I can't change her. I can only change how I respond. I've started focusing on rebuilding my life, getting a better job, finding new hobbies, and spending quality time with the kids. I refuse to let her define me or break my spirit. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs sooner, but at the same time, I understand that nobody's perfect. What matters now is moving forward, protecting my kids, and making sure they grow up knowing their dad fought for them. If I could give any advice to someone in my shoes, it would be this: trust your gut, document everything, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. People can surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways. But in the end, integrity and love for your children are what matter most. Keep fighting, even when it feels like the world is against you. Looking back now, I realize that the whole experience changed me more than I ever expected. I used to think love and trust were the foundation of everything, but I've learned that sometimes those foundations can crack so badly that you have to rebuild from the ground up. Betrayal was a gut punch, but it also forced me to confront truths about myself and what I want for my future. I've come to understand that forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing what happened. It's about accepting that some things can't be undone and choosing to move forward anyway. I still get angry sometimes, especially when I see her trying to manipulate the situation or when I hear her lies about me to the kids. But I remind myself that I control my reactions, and I choose to be a better man for my children's sake. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that people are capable of doing terrible things, even those you love most. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair completely. But I also know that I can't let her betrayal define me or my life. I have to focus on what I can control: my actions, my integrity, and my relationship with my kids. Now, I'm rebuilding a new life, one where honesty and respect come first. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional scars, and I've become more involved in my children's lives. We go camping, play sports, and just spend time together. I want them to see that even When life throws you the worst, you can still come out stronger. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I want to say this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags, document everything. And most importantly, stand your ground. You might feel broken inside, but you're stronger than you think. Your kids need you to be the person they look up to, not the one who's been defeated by betrayal. In the end, I've learned that life is unpredictable. People will hurt you, lie to you, and try to manipulate you. But resilience is about how you respond. I refuse to let her lies and betrayal destroy what's left of my dignity. I will keep fighting for my children, for my sanity, and for my own peace. Because no matter what, I know I did the right thing, standing up for myself and the truth, even when it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do.